Hello, friends, and welcome back. Welcome to the Friday conversation. We are back again, talking classics and the literary fiction side hustle. We'll explain what that means in a minute, and also maybe some hot takes and lots of other stuff that I'm sure I can't think of right now. Until then, Chris, will you start us off?
Yes, my name's Chris Mohan from the Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel, and also the Speculative Speculations podcast as well, with you two fine gentlemen and our missing compadre who is travelling at the moment. But that's while the cat's away, the mice will play, or something like that. So here we are.
Right. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jared.
We are the employees in the back room goofing off while the boss is gone.
Taking long breaks.
You can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and, of course, on the Speculative Speculation podcast, which we're supposed to be recording right now. Mm-hmm. And other fine podcasts on pagechewing.com.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So I want to start off with a question, because we were all talking. I mean, you were both talking about your week and how it's been a little bit rough. So I have a question for weeks for those rough weeks when you get to Friday. How do you unwind for the weekend? What's your strategy to kind of recharge your batteries? What do you do?
It's a good question, that one, actually. Friday night's the most important one for me out of them all, because Saturdays tend to have something happen in them that you need to do for other people at some stage. And Friday night is the night where I try and do something for myself at that stage. And often it's spending time with you fine folks. Because in the weeks that it doesn't happen, it is like there's a bit of a big hole in your life in that way. And we've had the occasions in the past where we missed it, and then there was like the message would come out and go, can we just meet up for like an hour or something just to catch up, because there's like something weird about not speaking. But yeah, doing that with a bit of a drink occasionally and having that to unwind is always means that you, regardless of what happens the rest of the weekend, I always feel like I've done something for myself on that Friday at the end of it, while everybody else is in bed or whatever else is happening. So that's kind of, regardless of what happens, that's my plan all the time.
Pretty solid plan. What about you, Jared?
Yeah. Cheers to that, Chris. Yeah, no, I definitely doing these things on Friday nights is the I would say the beginning of my unwinding for the weekend, and so I'm thankful for this. So it's just a really cool thing we do, yeah. And you know, because after we're done, you know, I go sit down, I watch something usually, and it just sets up the rest of the weekend, and the idea that I don't have to get up for work the next day is huge, because that's been my biggest problem this whole week, is actually just getting up and going, that when I didn't want to. And so tomorrow, you know, we get to sleep in, and do stuff for yourselves, do stuff for the house, do stuff for, you know, for my channel, if I am so inclined. And
that's a good idea.
Chris should try that sometime. Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and catch up on reading too, and enjoy it. You know, have the time to actually enjoy it. I mean, I read during the week too, but it's more of an in-between thing. You know, I'm doing it in between other stuff. Whereas on the weekend, I can actually take the time to sit down and actually have a block and read. You know, and it's nice.
Mm-hmm. What I'll say before Steve goes there, the only problem with doing that, Jared, right, you know, that sleeping in part, is we're of a certain age, right? And if we drink too much on the night before, you've got to get up and have a piss about 7 times before you before you actually feel like you've had enough rest. Yeah. You know, or maybe that's just me, but I suspect it's men of a certain age that happens to.
Yeah, you gotta plan around that.
What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I think my Friday nights now are with you guys all the time, and when we miss for whatever reason, I mean, sometimes it's just no one of us can make it, or things don't work out, or whatever. It's the whole weekend feels weird. It feels off, and then we go more than a few days without talking, and it's kind of strange. It's kind of weird. Just used to it, but I think Friday nights are important, like you both had mentioned. Kind of just getting because we have the longest time before having to go back into the hellscapes that we have to go work in. But I think that and for me, just getting some fresh air and getting out and just moving, doing something, and getting your mind off of things. And I think even just stuff for the channel or podcast or whatever, writing a blog post, just to create. I just spent about an hour editing pictures that just kind of zone out and don't think about anything else and just focus on something. And I think that creative outlet's important, even if I'm not very good at it. It's still fun. So it's just a good escape. It's good therapy just to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think about a lot in terms of like making that content, even though I go long periods without doing it. It's that idea. It's not really for other people. It's kind of for me at the end of the day. And if somebody watches and comments on it, that's like a plus. But ultimately, it always just feels good to have invested energy into something that wasn't work or wasn't, wasn't a drag, something I chose to do. You want to talk about something, do something like that, and just put it out there. And then just see what happens. But it's not really about, building the empire or or anything like that. So that kind of endeavor has its own rewards, I think, outside of the numbers or whatever else people want to do with it.
I think it's dangerous to get you because you can get wrapped up in the analytics and the numbers and all that stuff, but then it becomes more of a job and it becomes more of a, it becomes something else. So when you just stop caring and just, this is what we do. And if one person listens or watches or whatever, then that's,
you see, you can tell Steve's big, right? He said 5 there, and I was like, 5?
Well,
that would be amazing.
Week, 5 in a good week. I'm like, I've double digits this week. Joe Rogan, watch out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That big money deal is coming.
Oh yeah, I can all the brand deals, and I'm gonna get boxes of free stuff, and it's gonna be great.
It is a good question though. If we were to get a brand deal, which company would it be sponsors us? Some sort of incontinence pants based on what we've discussed so far.
It'd be kind of, we need to do like in like Image Comics or something, or because there's so many book publishers that they're so spread out. It'd be tough to pick one or something. Maybe Broken Binding. That might be a good one. Or but with Image, you get the library that they have is pretty vast. I mean, you could all the Brubaker stuff. That's the first thing. Brubaker stuff. What about you guys?
That's a good one. That's because if they sponsored us for the Brubaker stuff, then we wouldn't be banning it all the time. It would save the money. Just any kind of beer, a nice kind of independent brewery would do me. That could be for gin, could be for whiskey, could be for lager, could be for whatever we want. I'm not fussy.
What about you, Jared? Jeez, who would I want for a sponsor? That's the idea there. Yeah, no, I think you guys are on track. Any of those, any of those type of publishers, the real cool ones, and or a local brewery, local type of thing. That'd be really cool. I don't know. I really haven't thought about it that much, to be honest with you.
Neither have we.
Like, that's like. How about Wizards of the Coast? I mean, I don't know.
That's
a good one.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Playboy.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Do they still exist?
Actually, I have no idea. Genuinely, the 18-year-old of me would have been well up in the current affairs, but the time has passed in that regard.
I mean, it used to be a thing, and now it's you can get online and in 5 seconds, it's so I don't know. I don't even know if they're still doing things or what.
That'll be my project for this week.
Well, if they're
Yeah, fully explore
it,
the
yeah,
remnants of whether Playboy Mansion is still a thing.
if they're sponsoring me, they're probably pretty desperate. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Maybe Barnes and Noble
oh, that'd be sure.
or a
Oh, that'd be
major
cool.
book chain.
That'd be cool.
Amazon would be good.
Amazon, that would be the
Yeah.
now you're talking like big time, real time.
Yeah, maybe we know someone who maybe can facilitate that.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
They already sort out same day delivery for Jared, so he's getting enough of those perks.
Yeah, I can order something right now. see it in the morning.
Dear.
Yeah. So so a few months ago but a year ago. It's been a while. 6 months to a year ago, we were talking. I don't know how it started, but we started reading literary fiction, and it was dubbed the literary fiction side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, we've read a couple of McCarthy books. We've read 1984, Jared's favorite book. We've read Frankenstein, and I'm sure something else I can't think of. But the reason that we wanted to talk about it is because since doing that, I've been a lot pickier with my reading, and I lose interest really fast. Because when you read something like 1984 and then you go to something else, it just doesn't do it for you. Name of the wind. It's just I'm much less patient, and I used to push through books and think maybe things will turn around, and they never do. Like you get to the end, it's like I should have stopped halfway, wasted my time. And sometimes just something's not for you. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just not your cup of tea. So I've noticed that I've been a lot pickier, and it's been a regret to start this project with all of you because it's ruined my reading. So thank you for that. But what do both of you think? Are you experiencing the same things?
Well, I'm struggling with reading at the moment, partly due to energy, but partly due, I think, probably to a little bit of that. If something like the book we're reading at the moment is really causing me, I don't like it at all. It's just not. It's not doing it for me. But I will finish it because it's an award-winning book and that kind of stuff. But I think there is something to picking up a book that is defined as a classic, and that for some reason it has something in it. Now, sometimes that can be a classic book. Like we've read a couple of the McCarthy books, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about Blood Meridian, and even when people were reading Blood Meridian, there was that sense of, I can appreciate why this is good, but I'm not enjoying it kind of aspect to it. And you sort of know why it has value and why it's respected from the outset without necessarily vibing with it. But often when you're picking a book off the shelf that is a discovery or something you're trying out, it is hard to have that kind of level of faith and kind of say, look, if I give this another 100 pages or I get to the end of this, is there going to be a transformative experience at the end of it? And not saying every book you read has to be a transformative experience, but I think most times when you pick up a discovery, you're kind of hoping for that at the very least. Unless you're kind of going, I'm going to pick up something pulpy. I just need something to read along in the background. Just keep things churning along. You don't have to think about. So it is. I definitely evaluate books against a higher standard now, or different standard. Higher is probably the wrong word, but a different standard, if you know what I mean. It has to have some sort of literary value in some ways, I think, for me to kind of think this is worth going on through and using that way. Certainly for those kind of ones that I'm doing by myself, or you're trying to tick along and see. I don't know. What about you, Jared?
Interesting viewpoints and interesting questions. I read a lot of literary fiction in the past, and I've also studied quite a bit of it, and I've written essays on how to analyze it and do all this stuff with fiction, short stories in particular, but other stuff. And so I've always gravitated back to fantasy because it's just in my wheelhouse. It's my first love, and it will always be my favorite genre of literature. And of course, not to separate fantasy from literature, with quotes, so to speak, because stuff like Erickson and Donaldson and Wirtz is the highest form of literature I've ever read, in my opinion, and that's just an opinion, but it really is. And I think I think a lot of literary fiction gets a lot of, it gets, because fantasy is a small genre and it's not widely spread, and literary fiction gets a lot more exposure, and due to its very nature, a lot of people are drawn to it. A lot of people pick it up, and it's also usually quite a bit shorter.
That's true.
And
Yeah,
you're able to read it quicker. You're able to, and there's a lot out there to be said for it. To be said for literature that touches something with the people who are reading it, and speaks to them. That said, I haven't enjoyed our recent foray into literary fiction. I came on a little bit late to the McCarthy thing. I only read Child of God, which I found pretty miserable. And
Yeah.
not because it wasn't well done, and I want to put that caveat on everything I'm saying here.
yeah.
But it's just not my cup of tea. And 1984 is a masterpiece, probably one of the best of the century, and I hate it. And Frankenstein was, of course, that's one of my great loves. That book, I love that book immensely. Whether you can consider it, see that the thing about the McCarthy stuff and even 1984 and the next one we're doing, American Psycho, that I consider more contemporary fiction. It's maybe 1984 is separate, but the term literary fiction kind of bugs me a little bit. Because I think everything I read is literary in one way or another, and and I think Frankenstein I would call a classic. 1984 probably falls into the classic territory now, whereas Child of God and American Psycho, I think they're just contemporary fiction.
Right about that.
That's kind of how I classify it. So, and I haven't been impressed with contemporary fiction so far.
Interesting.
And that because I've read a lot more classics than I have contemporary. So and the classics are classics for a reason. They stuck around for a reason. And because they still speak to people today. Will American Psycho speak to people 100 years from now? I'm going to have a hard time seeing that based upon what I've read so far. Same thing with like Child of God. Maybe Blood Meridian will. That has a firm historical relevance, I think. From I have seen the movie, and I have heard quite a bit about it. But so maybe that one, we'll see. But there's a lot to digest there, I guess.
That question you bring up about contemporary fiction and things like American Psycho, I probably a bit like the classic novels. I think if you fast forward another 100 years, American Psycho will just be seen as a testament to the time it was written. Nearly like a snapshot of the 1990s. America, at the corporate nature, capitalism, and all of that kind of stuff. The kind of mocks and uses as a play field in some ways, in much the same way as we would look back at a lot of the classic English novelists of Victorian times, or otherwise like Dickens. There is a sort of whimsy in living in the squalor of London and the streets of London, but there has a sort of that Dickensian kind of tale and storytelling kind of is a testament to that time and place in ways that there were no movies, there were no TV series. That is the record of that time in a lot of ways in the way people thought. And like I say, it's interesting to think in another 100 years what are the books that will have stood the test of time. Because even if you were to go back to 1920s, etc., even F. Scott Fitzgerald and Hemingway and people like that, not all those books were lauded at the time, you know, and they were not loved at the time, and they came onto curriculums and things much later, and now go down as classics. And it'll be interesting to see how our generation of book, etc., will last past that.
Yeah. Yeah, and neither was Frankenstein. That was not
that's true.
given the kudos that it's given today. And at the time it came out, and there were actually some bad reviews on it at the time it came out. But what is it? What is it about Frankenstein that still speaks to the modern reader right now? And it's that aspect that she captured that makes it still relevant today. And I think George Orwell captured that in 1984 as well. There's something he captured that makes it still relevant 80 years later, or 70, however long it's been. But the will McCarthy capture that? Remains to be seen. I mean, maybe he did in The Road, but I don't think he did in Child of God.
No, I think The Road is probably the one that would stand the test of time the best, even more than Blood Meridian. I think Blood Meridian is a Western, and I think it deals with themes from Westerns, so it kind of incorporates those elements. But I think The Road is more of a, I'll say neutral, but it's more of a human nature, human experience kind of story that will still be relevant in 100 years from now.
I think you could sort of compare it to music if you want to, people's great albums. Like you can talk about like a Sgt. Pepper's, from the Beatles, and people listen to Sgt. Pepper's and go, this is obviously one of the greatest albums of all time, and then kind of go deeper cuts and get in the middle of the White Album a bit later. So you could start off on The Road, said McCarthy. I think it's very accessible. I think it's very easy to read, very easy to follow. And then the more that you like McCarthy, the further you get down the road and into the weeds, the more that you'll kind of get to Blood Meridian and go, God, this has incredible value. It's incredibly powerful. It's the kind of book that begs to be reread, I think, multiple times, whereas I think The Road, I mean, I could reread The Road in the morning, but I think I got a pretty good sense of it the first time through about what it was trying to say and what it was trying to do. And, not all books and stories have that ease of entry or that ease of communication that sometimes some movies and things have. Same goes for movies as well. Things that were shunned and called trash at one period come back and people go, actually, when you revisit that was saying a lot at that time that we all missed, and is those eternal themes I think that you're talking about, Jared, and the things that I find in Frankenstein and the things that I find in 1984. Basically every page has a thought or a sentence in it that you go, Jesus, that doesn't half resonate with 2024 Chris sitting reading this, and even though it's kind of talking about a future or a past or some other place or whatever, the thoughts and the ideas and the internal monologues that go with the characters there, people identify with as, maybe just somebody that's trying to work and earn a living and then kind of feeling about what's happening outside me that don't have the control of the world around them, like mentioned before. So it still does kind of, it almost reads like a manual, as we discussed, on how to control people.
Yeah. Horrible book.
Well, I think if that book doesn't exist in 100 years, then we're in trouble.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's it's the ultimate warning. And if you're right. If it's not around, that means society missed something. That means
I mean, that whole idea of controlling what people read in general, like banning books off curriculums and things like that, is maybe because of things like 1984, people know is a very dangerous sign for free choice and for progress in society. Even though it is a dark book in a lot of ways, it does serve as much as a manual as a warning sign. And I think we discussed it at the time, both in Frankenstein and probably in 1984, that it's through art that those things happen. Like, you don't get politicians coming out and serving warnings for the future a lot of years down the line, because like Hitler's been and gone. Did we learn really much about the rise of Hitler or stuff at the time? It could easily happen again. I think there definitely is that kind of. So history doesn't teach you, but these artifacts in art and movies, TV series, music, all the rest of them sort of do stand the test of time and serve as something to reconcile towards and go, oh boy, this is an awful lot like this thing.
Yeah, I think so. We back then, how many books were published every year? Maybe a couple hundred.
Mm-hmm.
And now, what is there? 4 million books published every year. So, are the books on the best-selling list going to be considered classics in 20 years?
That's a good question.
I can think of no better man to answer it than Jared, because this is the man who reads the bestseller in the supermarket every week. You may tell people about your other side hustle.
Actually, today, since you're calling me out here, Chris, I started reading, because number one in the country right now is John Grisham. It's like a sequel to The Firm or something like that.
Okay.
And I started reading the first paragraph of each chapter and the last paragraph of each chapter of that one. And I got to about 4 chapters through, and I was like, and then I saw, I just wasn't feeling it, and then
Did you go straight on the Amazon and review it? No,
I didn't. Way down at number 14 on that list is Brandon Sanderson's Lost Metal.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, cool. Fantasy's in the top 20 in the whole country. So I've been reading Brandon Sanderson's Lost Metal, chapter by chapter, first and last paragraph. And I'm up to chapter like 6 now. And it's actually pretty bad. I'm sorry to say.
I also think it's fair to say this review is not definitive, but it has worked for getting you into Daniel Steele and lots of other people.
I finished 2 Daniel Steele books in this fashion, and I wasn't unhappy with finishing them in that manner. I don't want to read the whole thing, but but I got the gist with the Daniel Steele. I did try. What was it, John Le Carre?
Mm-hmm.
A spy thriller that was number 1 for a while. That was actually, I was lost with that one. I couldn't do that method.
Too dense
with that one. It was just too much going on. There were too many plot points and plot twists and stuff, and so I got lost with the spy thriller. Which they're designed to have plot twists, and they're designed to have a bunch of
things
characters
happen in the middle of chapters.
Things, yeah. So that made sense. But the Daniel Steele I got through, no problem. I'm getting through the Lost Metal, no problem. I understand everything is going on, but the writing is just not where we're at. Like it's just not. It doesn't compare. It's quite simplistic, and I don't mean that to be negative on Brando Sando, but he's doing what he's doing. He's making a living. He's doing it great.
Is he ever making a living? Yeah. He's doing all right.
Really good living. So kudos to him, but he's captured something in the American imagination. But it's not for me. That's
that idea of the bestseller list. Given that, I think it's fair to say, by all surveys, the average reading age of the average American stroke British person, whatever, has fallen steadily over a 20, 30-year period. To be able to sell that number of books, you need to write in a set style. That's why crime, romance, kind of with similar plots, kind of similar, very simplistic, very dialogue heavy, sell so well. I mean, they're
Yeah.
propulsive reads rather than being deep,
Yeah. Lost Metal
thoughtful.
is definitely a lower than college reading level. It's middle school reading level.
Yeah.
I would say.
Is that the key to success, to make it, I don't want to say simplistic, but accessible?
Maybe. If I knew that, I would be very successful. I guess I
Yeah,
don't know, but
I think it's worth saying that to be able to do it well is still a thing of great skill.
yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah.
Not saying it's easy to do, because obviously if it was, then
No,
people would have cracked the
yeah,
formula.
you still have to have that ability to have the the stamina to set that schedule, to get that many words out a day. That's a lot of work. So I'm not putting that part of it down. It's a lot of work, and he deserves everything he's got because he put the work in, and he had the ambition to do it and do what he does very well. And but it's just but there is something to be said for targeting down your to an audience, targeting down to an audience,
Yeah.
where you're not challenging the reader, so the reader isn't growing as a reader. The reader's staying at the level they're at. And that's just not my preferred type of reading. I want to read something that challenges me. And I've found nothing more challenging than the stuff I do read, the Donaldsons, the Ericksons, and the Wirths, and a few of those classics and stuff. And that's the challenging stuff. Even like Melville's challenging. We did him on us, speculative speculation podcast, and it was a challenging read, and it was you may have liked it or not liked it, depending upon your taste in the book and the sci-fi book, whatever. But it at least made you think about stuff, and made you think about social issues and language and all that stuff, and that's what I crave in my entertainment, stuff that challenges me.
I think part of the success that not only Sanderson, but anybody who's on the top 10 or the bestseller list consistently is just a stroke of luck too. I mean, because there's so many books that you just catch lightning in a bottle, and I'm sure there's 1,000 other writers out there who can do things as good or better than Sanderson can or has, but just have, for whatever reason, planets didn't align for them, and they just didn't get the traction that they were hoping for. So it's a tough gig.
Discovery is
Very
just
tough.
almost impossible now. Like if you were writing a book yourself, you need the stars to align in some way for you to hit anywhere near a critical mass, or find that, or do that. It's just, I just don't know how. Like you said, 4 million books a year, something like that. How do you, even if you're published by a publishing house, how do you stand out in the bookshelf? Like, we've all walked into bookshops probably recently, even as people who are very much immersed in this hobby, and I look at the bookshelves and go, I know something about, or have heard about, maybe even in the science fiction and fantasy bookshelves, about 20 to 25% of these. Like, that's a challenge. Even the people that do this every week and do podcasts and do all that kind of content creation, it's kind of bizarre. And that's it, without even going to self-publisher or anything like that. It must be so difficult.
Oh yeah. No, I don't pay attention to media that often, and I don't know. I would say my lack of knowledge of who is on the shelf is even more than 25%. Because I really don't pay attention to what's coming out and what's in all that stuff, and so I go in there and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here I never heard of.
And the work those authors put in to get to that shelf for us not to recognize them is,
I know.
sometimes years of work and dedication and blood, sweat, and tears. And so, yeah, it's wild.
Certainly
And then Jared reads it in the supermarket and goes, "That's not very good, is it? I mean, this first paragraph and this last paragraph suck." And he's carrying his stakes underneath each arm as he's trying to balance the stakes that he's carrying with holding the book, trying not to get grubby marks all over it.
No. Proper reading is you have the cart, you have the shopping cart. You got to place it on the cart and open it nicely.
Pro tips, you say?
No creases.
No breaking spines.
No breaking spines.
Oh, jeez. Jared's not that person, Steve. He's not that kind of deficient individual that would just go bang. There you go. Not my problem.
So we talked about transformative works and books that make you think. Even something like 1984 or Mayville or Child of God. Even though one or more of us didn't enjoy them, I think it's safe to say they were very thought provoking, and we had a lot to think about after, even if we didn't enjoy it. So you get to a point where, why isn't everything we read to that level? Why don't we have that bar? I guess it's good to, and I ask myself this all the time. I do enjoy just trying new things, and sometimes I want an easy read, something that just, but then when I'm done, I wonder, what did I miss out on that time that I could have been thinking about for the next few months? Because I still think about 1984 almost every day. I think about that book, and it's like 300 pages, and I still think about Child of God, and not so much Child of God, but more Blood Meridian, The Road. So it's, how do you spend that time? What do you? So those are the questions I've been asking myself lately, anyway.
Yeah, sometimes you got to turn your brain off, and you still want to be entertained. I'll be reading Conan comics till the day I die, and they're not all good. Some of the stories are repetitive, and some of the stories are obvious, but it's still, the barbarian swinging a sword and killing people, and being a hero in some cases, and being not a hero in other cases, and it's still fun. And then every once in a while you get a gem of an issue that you're like, oh wow, that was actually really good. And he's my favorite character from comics, and I just keep reading him. And I don't have to think about it too much. Like you said, sometimes you just want to relax and shut your brain off for a while and soak up the fun. But when you do that, when I do that anyways, I want to move on to the next thing that's going to make me think. Yeah. Once I'm relaxed and I get that out of my, then I'm going to all right, let me pick up, something with a little more challenge to it.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that too. It's when I think on BookTube and I'm using this as an example, but on BookTube there's different kind of circles. There's the kind of the horror, there's the fantasy, there's the romance, there's all these different genres, and there's a classic literature group too out there that
there is. I
always thought was kind of stuffy and kind of they're kind of judgy in some ways. Like they kind of, but now I'm like, I get it. Okay, I get it. I'm not saying that's me, but I understand the sentiment now, I guess.
I think what's interesting for me is I still don't think I could switch full time to just reading that one type. It's just, I don't think that would work for me anymore than any other way of doing it. That idea that I would just read classic book after classic book, because I do think they suffer from the same problems as any other genre. At a certain point, once you read a certain mass of them, it's the same story told and dressed up in another way, and that's true. But something to punctuate your reading and break it up. I think kind of going back to what you said, Jared, there a second ago, I think the idea that when you read your Conan comics and then you're going through and picking up something else, it is that contrast that lets you see when something's different. You know what I mean? When you pick something up and within 100 pages you go, oh man, this is transformative compared to what I've been reading recently. And you often see that, especially, booktube wrap-ups, monthly roads. People say, I've had a good reading month, nothing great, but all a steady 3 to 4 out of 5. And, you can say, oh, I've enjoyed everything and I've gone, that can be good. And then you have other months that somebody's read a 5-star book and a lot of ones that they didn't like. And classically, I think the takeaway from those months is that you'll remember the 1 month with the 1 5-star book and the other dross you did enjoy a lot more fondly than the 5 or 6, 3, 4-star reads that you get, even though you enjoyed them all, and you got value out of them all. You were never bored by it, all the rest of it, but you're always searching for that something, that piece of art, that movie, that book, that TV series that kind of, as you rightly said, Steve, it makes you think every day. And I think the older that you get, it is often the stuff that really challenges you. Once you've seen a lot of stories, once you've done a lot of reading in the same way, it takes something to shake you out of that. And for cinema, for me, it's often the most challenging stuff. Now, I think we did the thing about the top 5 and our top 5 lists in the Patreon forum. Thanks, Josh, for those. Keeping them going.
Yeah.
But the top 5 horror movies. And, I think that brought an awful lot of interesting opinions up, but I always come back to things like Raw and Titan as being these things that are incredibly difficult to watch, but I think about a lot. Oh my God, I think about what kind of they engendered and the feelings they brought out in me because they're so challenging to watch. How does it make me emote? How does it make me feel? How does it disgust me? Why does it disgust me? All of that kind of stuff. And it's like, and I think in much the same way, like even Child of God is a nothing book. It feels like, it barely feels like anything to pick up with. And I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I listened to the conversation and people were able to elucidate and talk about why they didn't like it rather than this was just trash. This wasn't good. That wasn't really the feeling that came along. It was like, oh, this is very dark in a lot of places. It doesn't really have an awful lot of light. There's not a lot of contrast to it. I don't understand the motivations of the main character. You're really able to talk about why, rather than reading up something going, I sort of made it through 50 pages and nothing happened or wasn't invested in anything. That wasn't what was happening in that little short book. And I think that's where the interest comes for me, is that you can read something and dislike something. I'm thinking it for 6 months and kind of go, maybe I did get more to that than I thought I did at the time. I had a reaction to it that kind of was a repulse by it, but it stuck with me to a level that maybe something else that I enjoyed is gone from my head.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we're doing the Sci-Fi Masterworks every month.
Yes.
And we still, to this day, talk about Cities in Flight. Yes. As much as none of us liked it.
Yeah.
But still, we talk about it, and we talk about the effect it had on us, and we talk about how it made us have everything else we read, we relate to it. And, and it's just one of those things that we didn't enjoy it for what it was,
yeah.
But we enjoyed looking at it and saying, this is what we don't like in science fiction.
Yeah.
Or this is what we don't like about this type of storytelling. And it was something that, it was a style of storytelling from the 50s and 60s that was just very, very in the time period and how it was put together and how it was constructed. And as modern readers, we did not jive with it at all. And there was some structural problems and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was because we were so used to many other forms of storytelling that we enjoy. And it's just interesting how that, it wasn't a great story. It wasn't, the story itself didn't stick with us, but some of the ideas and some of the story construction and the construction of the literature kind of opened our eyes to what was going on with a lot of other books.
Yeah.
And it made us appreciate other books a lot more. and that's what we got out of that bad experience almost.
Yeah, it's inability to change a main character over 500 pages or something.
Mm-hmm.
Then to do that, it helps you appreciate books that do that thing of we have a central character that we follow the whole way through, but there is progression through this in ways that and you use that comparison as a way um to judge other books and to rate them
Yeah,
and to discuss them. Yeah,
I think it helped us articulate our thoughts a lot on
yeah.
a lot of other topics, a lot of other books.
So I have a question for both of you.
Okay.
Let's say none of us had ever met and we didn't do any of this podcasting, YouTube, any of this stuff. How much different would your reading habits be? And would you be reading things like Blood Meridian or The Road or Child of God or um, anything else that you normally you kind of stuck with a certain genre before? If you did, I mean, I know Jared, you've read a lot of different works and you've always done that. But how much different would it be had you not done these kind of discussions? Because a lot of people don't have people to talk to about certain books, and it's a solitary experience, and they read the book and they think about it, and they don't really have no one to bounce ideas off of. And I think that's one of the reasons that these works are so enjoyable, because we have the ability to talk with each other and to compare notes and get different experiences from each other and different perspectives that we wouldn't otherwise. So if we didn't have these kind of discussions and you were just by yourself, would your reading habits be any different?
Good question. I think it's fair to say what I would have read definitely would have been very different. If I just take this year alone, and I think about the favorite books that I have read this year, I think maybe 6 or 7 of my top 10 that I've read so far this year, I wouldn't have, they wouldn't have come into my sphere of thinking at all this year. A couple of them I have found by myself, or maybe I suggested them, or something like that. But I definitely think the act of talking through how you feel about something enhances your appreciation and enjoyment in ways that couldn't. The amount of books that I've read and kind of went, I'm not sure about it, then discussed it, came off and went, oh, didn't see that, didn't understand that quite to the respect that other people did, and their experience kind of influences my experience at that stage, and you kind of see it through fresh new eyes. That the value of reading together, whether on the internet or in book clubs or whatever else you can do, is one of the things that makes reading so much fun.
Yeah. So the question is, would my reading have been different than what I'm doing now? And yeah, it would have been vastly different. This is like I was very conservative in what I read, what I chose to read before I started BookTube and before I started getting involved with page chewing. And I was either reading classics, history books, um, or just certain fantasy books. And getting involved with page chewing just really exploded the like my reading habits have like Vasha really opened the world to reading different things by getting me involved with read-alongs. And once I got involved with BookTube, I saw what other people were reading, and I realized that there's a lot of other fantasy books out there that people liked, and so yeah, I think I've read a vast amount of different things that I wouldn't have normally picked up, and I've been the better for it, and so it's been pretty great actually.
What's your favorite thing you've read that you wouldn't have read otherwise?
Oh boy, that's it. See, that's another thing that happened is I never used to keep track of what I read
Yeah.
before this, and now I'm like I have a spreadsheet, which is crazy to me. But I look at it and I'm like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. But um, I don't think I ever would have picked up Wirtz if I didn't get involved with BookTube. And um, and I let's see, what else would I have not have picked up? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is, I've read a lot of things. I wouldn't have read some of the sci-fi masterworks. And some of those I've truly enjoyed. I've really enjoyed Zelazny, Lord of Light. I really enjoyed Gene Wolfe's book there. Those are probably two of my favorite. And so that was really cool that I got exposed to those. Because I read a little bit of the Chronicles of Amber by Zelazny, but that didn't really grab me as much as Lord of Light did. Lord of Light was much better than what I read previously, and of him. And so that's it's kind of interesting because I don't know where I would have went after Erickson. I'm not sure, other than just waiting for him to put more stuff out, you know. And honestly, I probably would be reading more history books now if I wasn't involved in all these read-alongs that I'm involved in now.
Yeah, one of the reasons we're doing the SF Masterworks is because it sort of felt outside of our comfort zone. If you know what I mean, it was about expanding and challenging and kind of trying to see what it was that was considered great about those books, because a lot of people would talk about them in retrospect and go, "Oh, they're out of date. They're not as easy to read now. They're not." They would talk about them derogatory terms a lot of times rather than kind of talking them up. But as you say, like, there's a couple of the books I certainly haven't done, what, 14 have we done now? Some of them sort of blend in the background, there's no doubt about that in some ways, but there are a couple that are just really wow books, that you don't read anything like them, in much the same way as we were talking about Frankenstein, we're talking about 1984. They stand on their own as these really great literary works because of either how they approach it, or the ideas that are in there that were so far ahead of their time, or how they resonate. So, like you talked about the Zelazny book, Wolf, and Earth Abides are the three that I think out of the last rung. Those three stand up against.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest surprise was Earth Abides.
Yeah, never heard about that. At least I'd heard of Zelazny. I'd heard of Wolf. Earth Abides? What? Yeah. What? Never heard. Like, honestly, nobody talked about it.
Yeah, that one blew me out of the water because, like you said, I've heard of all the other people. I never heard of this guy. I never heard of this book. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this is really good. Like, really great.
Yeah. And one of the funnest things about it is sometimes we pull back the curtain a little bit on the Friday before the Saturday, but normally we arrive on the Saturday and we have no idea what everybody else thinks of the book. So you can be sitting there going, this is the greatest book I've ever read in my life. And then you get on the call and everybody's like going, well, wasn't this the worst thing that I've ever read? And everybody's going, yes, this was the worst thing that I've ever read. And you're like, did I read the wrong book this month? Is that what happened here? Is it one of those? And then occasionally you get to a book and you think, oh, this is a bit weird, but I really enjoyed it, thinking that everybody else is going to hate it. And then you come along and everybody's had similar experiences in much the same way of like, I don't know why I enjoyed this quite so much, but its use of Hindu mythology. Like, if you had told me that there was a book basically based on that kind of the Hindu gods, all of that kind of stuff, and that I would really invest in it, like, I took pages and pages and pages of notes because I was desperate to retain as much of it as I could, and then come at the end of it and say, well, this was really cool. And it was kind of about flying demons and all that kind of stuff at the end of the day. But it was also amazing, but it does open your eyes up open to different things. And it means that if something else comes along that somebody wants to suggest and kind of go, I've heard that this one has some sort of value, you kind of go, well, let's give it a go.
Yeah.
So for those listening who aren't familiar with the SF Masterworks series, what is it?
So it's a series published by Galanx, who basically had a lot of old licenses. They're a UK publisher. Up to the classic science fiction books written by a lot of the classic 50s, 60s, 70s authors like Philip K. Dick, like Joe Haldeman, Zelazny, all of these guys that went through. And they basically started to put them out in cheap mass market paperback versions in a way to, like the classics market in the bookshops now is massive. Because it doesn't cost you anything. These things are public domain now in a lot of cases. Or, this is a easy way for the publishers to make money. They put a nice hardback cover on something, or they make it into a series. And it's not like investing in a new publisher or this thing needs re-edited. They just put them out in new forms. And they have published, 198 of these now over a 14-year period in the new version that there is. And they're basically just putting them under the moniker of science fiction masterwork, that they have some sort of literary value. And certainly we're at the book 15 at the moment. We're definitely in the realm of these are very well established authors for the most part. So these are very classically held books. Like there's been 2 PKD books, Phil K. Dick books that we've read so far. There's been 2 Alfred Bester. We have done Joe Haldeman, Richard Matheson, Zelazny, Wolfe, all of these kind of guys, and you certainly do get an insight into why these guys are revered. A lot of times in terms of ideas, same thing from when we've been doing the short story fiction, the big book of science fiction. You get the kind of idea of, right, there's a Clarke story, there's an Asimov story. We've enjoyed those. You can kind of see, even in very short form literature, why those guys were so revered. For the right days or the way that they kind of presented and thought about things. And so we've been working away one book a month, kind of working our way through that, and then trying to use that accumulated knowledge month on month, I think, in some ways to kind of say, well, this is a bit like this, or I like this because, and using that kind of facsimile of comparing the books against each other in the language from a previous book, like Jared was saying about Cities in Flight, which was terrible. Well, terrible is the wrong thing to say, because the book 1 I enjoyed quite a lot. Book 2, I enjoyed some of. By the time book 3 came along, I was out, and it still had another 300 pages to go at that stage. But you can use it as comparison to kind of say this is like this, but different or otherwise. And we just have another 183 books to go.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. But that last page in Cities of Flight, Chris.
Well, I mean, the last page
Genius.
Genuinely is very good. It has a really big idea at the end of it. Like it does, and even though that book is not, I think, in totality all that great, it has a bucket full of ideas in book 1, an absolute bucket full of them, that I think are very good. And then the last page does set up a lot of other ideas and sort of mocks itself, I think, in some ways, which I think is kind of one of the best parts of it.
In a beautiful way, it mocks itself.
Mm-hmm. So it has value. I just don't particularly, I would never want to read it again.
Oh, no.
I've read it twice now. And as a commenter said in one of the videos of the discussion repost, thank you for backing up my 25-year experience that this book is a piece of shit. Which I laughed heartily at, I have to say.
Like
Masterwork, inverted commas.
I guess it's a good time to mention it. If you are a listener who is out there who don't have people to talk to, or don't have people to book clubs to join, or people to discuss literature with, join us on the forum, and you're welcome to.
Please do
come hang out with us and read shitty books like Cities of Flight.
I mean, they might be listening to this podcast going, well, I need to find a group like they're talking about, but not these 3 fucking idiots.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's true. Yeah, it's true.
Oh dear. Varsha's a smart one. She's not here. Sorry.
Yeah, she's on the other end of the spectrum for sure.
Yeah. But like those, that idea of classic versus whatever else you want to call it, it is it is one of the things that you use YouTube or searching for, and especially if you find somebody that has a sort of what you'd say similar taste to you, or somebody that is introducing you to books and ideas and things that fall kind of like something you'd read, but just kind of a bit. It's very easy to kind of jump on and go, well, I'll give that a go, and then see where it takes you. And then, as often happens, you see it in one person's channel, you read it, you really enjoy it, and then you start to see it everywhere, in some way, and it sort of is reaffirming that kind of thing of, right, okay, this booktube thing might work for me in some way or fashion.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, you know what I did? You know what I did a while back? This must have been 20 or something years ago. There was a big list. It was probably around 2000. There's a big list that came out in all the major newspapers about the 100 most influential books of the 20th century, and so I started reading the books on that list, because included in that list was Lord of the Rings. That was on the list somewhere, as well as Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That was on the list somewhere too, which I was very pleased about, that both of those were on there. I was like, okay, so these books are getting recognition that I thought they deserved, and that they're embedded with the other classics of the 20th century. You know, like the Catchers in the Rye and all the other ones. 1984 was on there, of course,
and all the other 97 books that I can't think of.
Yeah. Well, so I was like, okay, I'm going to read these, and I read Catcher in the Rye was on there. I read that, and I liked it. It's pretty good. It didn't blow me away like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, but I did enjoy it. It was really, really good, and I can understand why people love it. It it definitely has a good solid message in the writing's fantastic. And the one that I read on there that was near number one, either one or two, was The Great Gatsby.
Mm-hmm.
I hated that book. I could not stand it. There was something about rich people whining about their life that drives me nuts, and I don't like that type of literature. And so whatever, that's my hot take, that Great Gatsby sucks.
What was not when it was released, it was not liked either. It was only when it got put on school curriculums that was the example I was sort of using earlier, to say that Great Gatsby was not lauded when it was released either, which I think is interesting because of its place now in modern literary canon.
Yeah, and so I read a few others on the list too, and then I was like, I need to get back to fantasy. I'm sorry. So I quickly did, but
so, in your opinion, like, you probably don't remember where Lord of the Rings stood, right? Lord of the Rings is the tentpole marker for fantasy on literary lists, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it deserved? Should it be replaced by something else? And if there is something else, what should that thing be?
It's a good question. It's well deserved for what it is. His writing was impeccable. It's really great. Should it be replaced? Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I think it's too soon, believe it or not. I mean, I know it's been around for 70 years or whatever, 75 years. But that's kind of a drop in the bucket. So give it time. Maybe maybe because the other problem is the fantasy that we know as high fantasy or epic fantasy or whatever you want to call Tolkien, um, is so young.
Yeah.
It really is that, the precedent he set for what fantasy readers know today as fantasy. Um, previous to Tolkien, it was your swords and sorceries, your Conans. It was your portal fantasies. The people getting lost in the woods in fairyland or what have you. And
It was very fairies, wood magic, classic fairy tales in a lot of ways.
Fairy tales and other stuff like that. And so it was different. It was a different time. It was a different type of fantasy. And I think Howard did some incredible stuff with Conan as his backdrop that a lot of people don't give him enough credit for.
Mm-hmm.
The world he built around Conan doesn't get enough credit for, because it's all about, the stories are mostly just about Conan overcoming the problem of the story, right? And but I don't think he gets enough credit for his world building in the background, which was pretty fantastic. Yeah. And I think even Tolkien commented that on that part of it at one point, and how great it was. And but that was all leading up to, that's the building blocks of what everybody knows as fantasy today. And the stuff today just hasn't been around. It hasn't been around long enough. It's, some of the authors are still alive and still putting stuff out, so it's so new. It really is, relatively. It's just so new. So it's going to be hard to overcome the Tolkien, top, being a literary giant as compared to other literature,
Sure.
And it's well deserved. It's such a great book.
I only ask this because I don't know, but was Lord of the Rings as highly regarded before the movies?
Depends on the decade, I think.
So in 1999, or before they started filming the movies, was it considered the level it is now?
I think yes.
Yes,
but
because
without it being as widely known, if that makes
sense. It was considered a literary masterpiece because it was on that top 100 of the century list by the AP Press or whoever put that out. So it was considered a piece of good literature long before the movies came out. The movies just, of course, the movies give it a great popular appeal, and which it went through iterations of popular appeal in the 60s and 70s, and but that was strictly in the book sphere,
Well, it had the animated film adaptation that they tried to do in the late 70s, early 80s. So, but like an awful lot of fantasy, they just didn't consider that you could make a fantasy movie without like all of the money in the world. Yeah, and they were sort of right.
Yeah.
It's what makes the film such a remarkable achievement, though. In a lot of ways, it is one of those things that it shows the power of doing film adaptations for bringing things to a whole new audience. Because what happened to Lord of the Rings, I think, is it changed from something that was a rite of passage for somebody who liked fantasy and got into fantasy through every which way they went, to becoming a rite of passage for everybody at a certain age. So you could be 15, 16, have heard or seen the movies, like my children are doing at the moment, and going, oh, I'm going to read these as well as watch the movies. We're kind of going to read the books with our friends and then watch the movies, or watch one of the movies, read the books. And it's become part of popular culture in a way that it probably wasn't for everybody. Certainly for me when I was a young boy, but I was reading a lot, and I was reading fantasy when I was very young. So it became right, let's do it. Lord of the Rings, do it from an early age, but for like my wife or, you know, anybody else that was not reading fantasy, it was still seen as something that somebody else does. The movies come along and all of a sudden people are like, well, I could read that. And the best bit about Lord of the Rings is, even to this day, while it's beautifully written, does extensive world building, it is still very readable. It kind of straddles that line between being accessible and being really deep and rich and all of the things that we love about fantasy. You know, it does the thing that's really hard to do in fantasy, and in ways in which, if you were to try and replace it with another series, those other series, I don't think, do it as consistently well. Let's put it that way, as Tolkien did over those 3 books, 4 if you want to include The Hobbit, etc. You know, it really is a testament to how good that work is.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that about a lot of literary fiction too. There's a lot of it that's very accessible, and they're able to do that and still have those deep meanings and deep messages. And so I think that's not just a fantasy thing. I think that's a all literature thing. You know.
I think there was another book on there in that same list, or certainly a similar list, about most influential books of the 20th century that is very different from everything else as well. And we discussed it, I think, a couple of weeks ago. I remember Watchmen was on one of those lists as well, as being the only graphic novel that made that kind of thing, or in around the 50-ish mark, if I remember, starting in the list. And we sort of discussed it. Like, personally, I'm not as wide read as either of you two in the graphic book novel world or otherwise, but it's peerless in anything else that I've read in that space. And again, if I was to ask the same question of that, the other people, it's a must read. It's one of those things that I think extols why graphic novels are such a brilliant storytelling medium, because it uses it so effectively kind of the whole way through, and tells this really compelling, gripping, deeply thematic kind of touches on a lot of things. It does everything that you want great literature to do, but in this kind of other medium, and it's just extraordinary.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the other thing, any other comments on classics and how it's ruined my reading habits?
That'll come back, Steve. You just need to read better books.
Yeah, I guess. There's a lot of bad books out there.
Probably.
Objectively bad books.
Yeah, but we get the format, we get the platform to steer everybody right. So
that's right.
Come to page chewing and
come to page chewing and do what we do. Very well thought out. Well researched. Stick 300 books on a wheel, spin the wheel, and then whatever book it lands on, we read. And it always happens to be Steve's choice. I mean, it's just the way that it goes.
Hey, I'm on a roll. Yeah, there's a lot of books out there.
There are.
So it's nice to be able to go to something like a classic, quote unquote classic, and know that at least you'll be left with something to think about. So it's nice to have the life raft when you are feeling like you're in a rut. You want to be challenged or have your world broken in half like 1984 did.
Yeah.
Such a great book.
Yeah.
Jared hates it.
Hate it.
Yeah. So the other thing we were going to talk about is I think we threw around the idea of hot takes. I don't know if anybody has and there's been a few already, but
yeah. Kira Gatsby sucks. Rich people suck, because that's all I heard from Jared at that stage. Rich people suck.
Oh man, yeah. That was my
that your one, Jared? You
That's
must have
pretty
another
cool.
one.
Do I have another hot take? I don't know. I mean, I think I already had two. You guys need to catch up because I have the Brando Sando supermarket venture.
That's true.
And
I mean, Lost Metal isn't entirely beloved, and I have to say that I think it's fair to say the Wax and Wayne books are not loved in the way that people really have a fondness for the first three in Mistborn. Like, it's not.
I can see why.
Very hit and miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My hot take, I brought this up last week, was Clash of Kings. I don't think it's that great a book.
That's
First
fair.
book, very good. Maybe it is a byproduct of having watched the TV. I read the first book and then watched the TV series, so I had that experience. But I stopped reading the books at that point to watch the TV series, and then went back. I find it very stilted and not as revealing as the first book is about the depth of character and the thoughts of the character that go in it. And I believe Storm of Swords is incredible, but I found it such a slog. Maybe because I knew where the story was going, and I knew that it probably didn't deviate that much, but it didn't add levels and themes and ideas in the way that the first book did, for me anyway.
Well, I'm quite happy to tell you that you're wrong, Chris. So that's all right.
That's what's a hot take. That's what's a hot take.
Yeah.
Because
that's
you know it's
take.
wrong. Isn't that,
that's my
isn't
hot
what a hot
take on your
is?
hot take.
I mean, you said that thing about the Great Gatsby, and you knew it was wrong as well, Jared, but it was your opinion. And I respected it. And when the shoe was on the other foot, you were like, stuff you, Chris.
Nah, you know, Great Gatsby sucks. You know that.
You're about something good.
Yeah, you're about to embark on the adventure, aren't you, Steve, of the reading and watching the series, and you actually put this to the test with a group.
Yeah, well, I think we'll start soon. I think when the boss gets back, we'll start it. But the books are so. I think they did so good of a job with the adaptation for the first few seasons anyway that it's. There's many times when I thought I should just be watching the TV show because it's pretty damn close. But everyone tells me adventures. Yeah, after book 3 or 4.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty damn good. Yeah.
Yeah. One of our friends from BookTube, Philip Chase, I don't know, a month or so ago, was on a discussion, or I forget where it was. I forget what channel it was on, but he talked about how
probably in Jared's.
Was it Jared? Jared always gets the
the best
good
guests.
stuff.
Yeah. Hardly.
He had mentioned that enjoyment of a book shouldn't factor into the review score.
Yes,
your enjoyment should not be a factor in your review. And I go back and forth on this because on one hand, of course, your enjoyment should be part of the review. So your overall score or whatever it is, your feedback on the book, if you enjoyed it, if it made you feel something, if it made you feel positive, it made you laugh, it made you think, whatever it is, your enjoyment level should factor in. But on the other hand, if you are being objective and separating yourself and just reviewing and grading the text on technically the tag, the prose, and objectively breaking it down, I get that part of it too. The thing is, I'm not smart enough to do that. So it's not a factor for me. That's not my thing. I'm not that. I don't know enough or technically sound enough to do that objectively. So where do you both land on that? What are your thoughts on that? And I know that I think we're all in probably the same thoughts on reviews. I know, Chris, we've talked a lot about reviews and review scores and things like that. So, but just in general, what are your thoughts on enjoyment and where that should that factor into your review of a book?
It was on, I think he was on with Johan from Library of the Viking. I think it was a discussion with him that one, and I sat listening to Philip going, as I often do, kind of going, that is such an interesting point, because as I've talked about this before, in some ways, Amazon reviews for every other product apart from art are functional reviews. So they are reviews about whether a vacuum cleaner works, or a speaker works, or the quality of the sound, how well built it is, and all of that kind of stuff. And you get to art, and it's subjective. And it is very much everybody's rating on a slightly different scale or against different things. And how do you aggregate that together in some ways? Because as Philip was probably alluding to, and I know like AP's talked about this before as well, if you reduce things down to just enjoyment, then you're saying that literary content or literary, the way something's written with metaphor has no value, which inherently isn't true. And it makes the problem of reviewing and rating books kind of difficult in that way, because you can, as you ascribed to before, Jared, 1984 is objectively a masterpiece, right? If you read it, but subjectively you hate it, right? And that's a very valid opinion of it. So how do you rate that book? Do you rate it in enjoyment? The example that I would use is books that I've read in the past and tore through and loved them, and as soon as I hit the last page I went, that is utter trash though. So something like the Dan Brown books, the Da Vinci Code, like designed to be complete and utter page turners that are compelling, you cannot put them down, but when you get to the end of it you go, I get nothing out of that book other than a couple of riddles that were kind of a bit light and all the rest of it. And how do you recommend that to somebody else? How do you say to somebody in a score or otherwise, this is for you or this isn't for you? Because on one hand, I really enjoyed my time reading it. On the other hand of it, aside from the reading experience, it's almost like, I feel like it's akin to just taking drugs or something, that so you've just kind of pumped a drug into your body for the time that you read it. As soon as that wore off, you were like, I couldn't have done something different with that time.
Yeah.
Or otherwise, it's very difficult to do. And it's what makes that conversation so interesting.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Chris, with the Da Vinci Code. I read that and I was kind of like, I just drank a cheap beer.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have spent the extra $1 to get a good beer. And it's like I enjoyed it at the time. I was really thirsty, you know, and I drank it down real fast, and I flew through it, and I was having a decent time when I was reading it. But as soon as it was over, and I look back now, and it's like, yeah, that's near, like I would never pick it up again. It's near the bottom of my list as far as enjoyable or reads that I'm ever gonna think about again. Yeah. But at the time I was reading it, it was okay. You know, I was just reading and I was having fun. Whereas, you know, like I said before, 1984, it really is that good. It's so well put together. It's so well structured that if you have any training at all, you recognize that, you know that, even if it's just listening to AP and Philip on YouTube talk about how they analyze books. If you've listened to them and you read 1984, you're going to recognize what they're talking about, and you're going to say, "Wow, this is what this guy's doing. He's perfectly putting this book together to get all the to get the aesthetic reaction at the end that's going to make you go, wow."
Yeah,
I've just been blown away. I see what he did. I recognize that he manipulated my mind as I'm reading this book, and that it worked. The whole purpose worked, you know, which is why everybody should hate this book. But it's a masterpiece, and it worked. And so, but like you said, I can objectively say what the book is and what it does and how well it does it, and still not like it for certain personal reasons. And I think Philip, when he was saying that with Johann, I think it wasn't that you shouldn't say whether you enjoyed a book. I think he's more saying that it shouldn't be the focus of the review.
Of the review,
The focus of the review should be: is it well done? Is it well written? Does it have good structure? Does it have good thematic elements and what have you? And then you can also mention, oh, by the way, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that was more of his point, because and he was talking to Johan, who does a lot of hype and I love this book because of this and what have you, and a lot of booktubers do that, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they're just getting on there and they're just telling you what they enjoyed. Some call it a review, and maybe they should just call it a reaction. This is how I'm reacting to this book, and this is why I love it and why you should love it, rather than a structural breakdown review. I know that some of our friends, Jimmy and Johanna, they take the time to really delve into the book, break it down, tell you all about it, tell you what's going on with the writing, with the structure and all that stuff. And I appreciate that when they do that, because I really want to know. But then they also let you know that this is how it made me feel on a personal level, and I liked it because of how it made me feel on that personal level, and I enjoyed it, or I didn't enjoy it because of that things. But you might, depending on your particular makeup or whatever. But so the ones that just react and say this is the greatest thing ever, I take those with a grain of salt, but.
Well, to piggyback in the back of that, and without cutting across Steve too much, do you think, and Steve run himself down there, he's very capable of looking for themes and pulling it apart in some way, but I think that's part of the type of readers that we are in general. Like, we're trying to do that. I'd say, if I look at my mum, I look at actually most of the readers that I know, they're only reading for enjoyment. And if it was to go on the flip side, especially looking at fantasy, and go to the really dense, literary, brilliant writers that are in fantasy, the likes of Enriches and Jordan or Wirtz or all the rest of them, there's lots of people that have read their books and went, I can understand how brilliant this is, but I didn't enjoy my process of reading this and had to give up. And again, there has to be a space for people to be able to express that without kind of it being a literary snobbery or something to say, oh, well, you're not smart. Like, because that's not what books aren't about, being a certain level of intelligence or being a certain level that you have to be able to get something out of it. So I think it comes down to the fact that on YouTube, especially if you're clicking on a video, and you understand the person that's reviewing that, you know what you're getting out of it, and what they're looking for from it. And that's why people ultimately gravitate towards certain reviewers or otherwise. Whereas an aggregating system like an Amazon or a Goodreads kind of throws everybody together. And it kind of says, and that's difficult then for the reader to discern what they're getting out of it.
Yeah, that's a great point about the Amazon and the Goodreads, is like that throwing everybody together, whereas you're not searching out a reviewer that you can relate to and trust because you know what they're about. You're just getting this conglomerate of average 3.5 stars, and that's it. And a few comments here and there. Yeah. And it's not an informed review. It's just a stat.
Yeah. Well, here's a question. So I was just going to say, just to illustrate that point, can you think of a book that you've read that you knew, like if you were to rate it on enjoyment, or say enjoyment, that you really enjoyed, but that you knew when you rated it, other people would find it challenging, or that the other people wouldn't get it in the same way you did, or it didn't land the same way with you? Like, when you're doing that review for people, regardless of whether you're giving a star rating or something, but you're telling people about that book, is there a book that jumps out to you in terms of, I'm going to say I really enjoyed this book, but actually I know in my heart of hearts that if anybody was to pick me up in this recommendation, they'll start to wonder, is he all right? What is it about it? Or that, you know, some of this challenging in ways, or that there's things that you've seen, or whatever it is that is that particular book. Because I think there are lots of those particular books, movies, TV shows, etc., that I think are difficult creatively, but they have something in them if you can connect with it. And it's not, again, it's not about intelligence. It's about you being on the level of the creator or the writer, or kind of seeing what they were trying to do in the story. Again, the example I'll use is, again, a well-known one, like Starship Troopers by Paul Verhoeven, one of my favorite movies. People seen that as an action movie. It was very clearly a satire by the end of it on, and criticism of war and military and all of that kind of stuff. But most people who went to see it didn't see it for that. And as soon as you say to them, did you not see the satire in it? They were like, oh, that changes I have to watch that again, because I wasn't thinking, I didn't go into the cinema. I thought I was seeing a spectacle. I thought I was going to see something of that ilk, and I didn't kind of realize the nuance, as often happens with a lot of Verhoeven movies, of that. So they don't see it. They don't approach it with that same mindset going in. Is there something you can think of that jumps out as a good example of for you? On the spot. I mean, you're only book reviewers. It's fine. You shouldn't have an example.
Quite a few, I think. I think the first thing that comes to mind is probably Second Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Because it can be a very difficult read. It's definitely not for everyone.
Sure.
And I understand why it's not for everyone. And it's just not, the material is tough to get through. And even if we want to go, even like something like Negative Space, it's a horror book that is, can be very hard to read at times. And there's a lot of disturbing scenes and imagery, and I think it speaks to a certain generation specifically about being, the millennial generation, about being disconnected in technology and, not having the social interaction. Or if you want to go to like comic books, I think Jared and Jose and I taught graphic novels a few weeks ago, and Crossed is one of my favorite books, but I wouldn't recommend it to hardly anyone because it's kind of fucked up. So yeah, there's quite a, or even something like Titane. I mean, I don't know that I loved it, but I don't know if I recommend it to anyone. It would depend on who it is, because it's not.
I literally couldn't recommend that to I can't recommend it to anybody. Like, I don't know anybody that goes that's normal. But the whole point is that it's not. It is a challenging piece of cinema in that way. What about yourself, Jared?
Jeez. No, everybody should read out what I like.
Okay. That's no.
That's
a good taste, like, that's for sure.
I don't think everybody would like. Well, I already know people. There's plenty of people who don't like Malazan. That's out there. I don't know why, but and I know there's people who like Wars of Light and Shadow. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I know Donaldson's not for everybody. And I don't, and people, that's one of my favorites. But I know for sure there's going to be people who would have a hard time reading the Gap Cycle. Yeah. But that's more because of the subject matter than I think the enjoyment level. I think if people were able to handle the subject matter, they would really enjoy Donaldson's writing. Yeah, I don't know what else. I mean, some of the reviews I do are kind of off the cuff and kind of kind of more performance art than breaking the book down.
Peek behind the curtain here.
If
people think you script your things for
people don't,
7 hours, yeah.
If people don't get it, if they don't get what I'm doing, then they might not understand what I'm trying to do by telling you about the book in that manner. But but I have never really gotten any feedback or comment on that aspect of it. People seem to enjoy it when I do go off the rails with that kind of stuff. But
I think that, like, sum it up, I think
Do you
it's
need
important.
a level of?
Oh, sorry.
I'm
I
sorry.
was going to say,
Go ahead,
just
Chris.
to sum it up, it's that idea that if you're going to do a review, you have to speak to your experience, though. You know, regardless of trying to couch it for other people or otherwise. This is what I got out of it, so to speak. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
Oh no, you just touched on what I was about to mention in a way, is the performative aspect of reviewing a book on a YouTube, on a platform like YouTube. Do you need a little bit of hype and a little bit of excitement to keep people's attention?
I mean, I would think my love for books would come through because I love this stuff. So I'm naturally excited about it. And so when I'm scripting something differently, doing something in a different manner, it's mainly because I don't want to just I don't want to repeat myself. One thing, and I'm also trying to just put something a little different out there. That's all. So that's exciting in and of itself, and it keeps me interested in keeping on doing it. Yeah.
I think it's nice to be able to find an angle with which to approach a review that isn't just page 1, chapter 1, I like this bit, chapter 2, I like this bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of, you want to have something that ties it together in some ways. In my case, it's usually thematically. You know, this book thematically resonated with me around these kind of areas, and this is what I got out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, some people break down their reviews like character, I'm going to talk about that. Setting, I'm going to talk about that. Yeah. Theme, I'm going to talk about that. I could never do that. I have to have a flow of my own, and if I stuck it to that kind of format every single time, I would not be doing it anymore.
Mainly because by the time I finished reading the book, and even though it's only like 3 days later, I don't remember any of the character names anyway, so it's that would be folly.
Yeah. How many times have you read a book and forgotten about it? No more than a week later.
Often. Quite often, I would say.
Not often, in my case. Comics, yeah, I've forgotten comics a week later, yeah, easily. But no, I pretty much, I have a pretty good retention, so I do okay.
I think comics take, 10, 15 minutes to read, and a novel, it takes 12, 14 hours?
That's true. There are times when, especially the way we read, so we would read, say for the Speculation podcast, we read 100 pages at a time. So we record on a Friday, right? And we do our 100 pages, and we do it on Saturday and Sunday, say, for instance. See, by the time Friday comes around, sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what happened in those 100 pages. Absolutely none whatsoever. And you're sort of relying on somebody else to get the conversation started and fill in the blanks. And for me to go, oh yeah, a character died.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Something else happened, you know?
Yeah, no, I've definitely skimmed through the sections that, we've read, that I've read, just a little bit before we start, so we can. But that's what that's what all your notes are for, Chris.
Oh yeah, that's all my notes. That's right, because extensive notes are always a very core part of my reading experience.
Yeah.
Luckily, I have at least one person I do the podcast with that does take extensive notes, and my memory is usually good enough that once they start on a certain thing, I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. And this is how I feel about it right now. Not when I was reading it, but this is how I feel about it right now when they've just brought it up. That's nice.
Oh wow! Everybody's learning our secrets now. This is not good.
Looking behind the curtain.
Our very high values of production. or maybe being exposed a little bit. I don't know. Eek.
Yeah. I think the only other hot take I think I would have is that the First Law trilogy is good, but not as good as everyone seems to think it is. And I don't think it's necessarily a good representation of grimdark for someone looking for grimdark. But
I completely agree, but I've never read it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Grimdark's the eternal thing that everybody's chasing. In some ways, it's almost like a mythical beast. In some ways, like the purest, most articulated form of grimdark. I don't think exists, because I honestly think people get different things out of different books, and therefore they're looking for different aspects of it.
Have you read 40K, Warhammer 40K at all?
No, I haven't.
I've read a bit of it. I've read a bit of Horus Heresy. Yeah.
Because isn't that where the term came from? That
I don't know. Depends on who you ask.
I'm not sure if it was. Yeah, probably was 40K to be
the grim dark future or whatever.
Yeah. But again, if that was the case, if it did come from from Warhammer, right? The thing that makes Warhammer cool is the different factions and the politics. It is not necessarily the grimness of the. I think it's a funny thing to tag on to Warhammer as being the thing that people read that for. Because for me, that wasn't what I was reading it for. It was the politics and the interworkings of that world and stuff is exactly what made that interesting. It was nothing to do with. Okay, there was a tone that was grim and stuff about it, but it wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't the thing.
Yeah,
I got sort of misleading in some ways.
Because I read the graphic novels, and they were fun. I had a blast with those.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't thinking at the time when I read those, like, oh yeah, this is grim dark. I was just thinking it was a blast to read them. I didn't, and nothing happy happened. Definitely.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was part of the appeal. It was like politics, and there was backstabbing and that kind of stuff. And you expected people to die. It wasn't necessarily that it was sort of subverting a genre in some ways. And maybe when it's been taken into fantasy, it's sort of subverted this kind of hero's journey stuff that's been happening for a very long time, and that lots of people had character, plot armor, and all of that kind of stuff. Nobody could die. And so it was a subversion of that was sort of led a bit, I suppose, at that stage by Game of Thrones, but the idea that we had at the end of the first book a main character died that we thought was going to be a mainstay of the plot and the story in the way through. And so people were like, oh, that worked for that very famous entity there. Let's put that into all of our books now, because that's what people want.
Yeah. Grimdark. No one agrees on what grimdark really is or isn't. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, it's. I'm not big on the labels of subgenres, but to me, it's all fantasy. It's good.
Yeah. Well, we're almost 2 hours now, and it's probably 2 a.m. for Chris. What time is it for you?
2 a.m. It's 1:46 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Behind the curtain. I mean, I've still this much of a beer to go. So for those that can't see, I'm I'll be up for the next little while, and then once I finish that, I'll be pissing for most of the night anyway, so it'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was a good way to start the weekend, though, for sure.
Well, it is. Absolutely. As we come full circle on it, this is an important part of my week. Right. These guys and gals, depending on who turns up or otherwise, is always that routine, or that having that kind of moment where this is what I'm going to do at that time, and I always have fun and I enjoy everybody else's company is a large part of that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. So until next time, Chris, where can people find you?
On Jared's you can probably find me on Chronicle of Chris YouTube channel, or on the Speculative Speculations podcast, which has been hosted on either Spotify or Vars's channel if you want to watch the the audio versions on YouTube there. Or you can find me in the Page Tune forums where I'll be posting top 5 lists of things in response to Josh's tags.
He's relentless with those things. It's so much fun, though.
He's very good. I appreciate him because I would miss it otherwise.
And Jared, where can people find you?
You can find me at a lot of those similar places. And on the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel. And someday Chris is going to invite me on his channel.
Let's make it happen. I mean, if I'm going to make a video someday, you should all be on it.
There you go.
Someday. Well, cool. Thanks both of you for hanging out. It's been looking forward to this since we talked about it a week or so ago. So
yeah,
really good stuff. And it's nice to just show up and just talk. It's no prep, it's just whatever.
Not like your normal conversation, Steve, where you're just like all 3 days previously. You're like, what can I bring to this today? You know?
Yeah. Don't have to look at notes or page numbers or so it's fun. I mean, not that that's bad. It's just sometimes it's nice to just show up and shoot the shit. Yeah. So yeah.
I like that the one of the questions you always ask me on the Penguin podcast is, are we done with your notes?
Oh yeah. I have notes too. I write notes too.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I want to make sure that we cover everything, so it's easy to forget when we go over topics and I forgot to ask about that. So
yeah.
Can you imagine if we ever do the Lost Rewatch podcast, right? The extensive notes that everybody will bring to that we will ultimately just burn in a big bonfire at the end. Yeah.
I somehow want to make that happen. I'm not sure how we'd ever make it happen, but I wish we could.
Yes, that would be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Till the end. Till the last few seasons, it'd be kind of rough, but it'd be fun. The button.
The button. We're on the mist. We're on the mist.
The mist.
The button's still to come.
Yeah. It'd be fun. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out. Hope everyone has a fantastic weekend and come by the forums, say hello. All the links are down below, so check them out and come and say hi and come and chat books with us. We're not all that bad usually, but everyone have a great weekend. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk very soon.